Good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? That's great, fantastic, fantastic. My name is Usama Charles. I'll be your trainer for the day. Just regarding this quick training session that I'll be hosting about the mystery of chocolate. Okay, so we'll start with a quick introduction and a quick icebreaker just to kick things off. So if everyone can mention their name, how long they've been with the company, and also since we're on the topic of chocolate, I thought why not maybe ask if, for example, if you were chocolate, what chocolate would you be and why? So I'll start just to give you guys a quick example as to what I mean. So my name is Usama Charles. I also go by a nickname Charlie, which is my phone name. And I've been with Amazon for about 4 years, to be precise, 4 years and 6 months, yeah, to be exact. So if I was a chocolate, I'll be lunch bar. Why? It's obvious. I think you'll get that joke if you watch the ads back in the day. But moving along, who would like to go next? Wasila, nice to meet you. Marvelous Creations, that's a very good one, a very good example. I love that example. Thank you so very much. But yeah, I do appreciate your feedback, and I think we'll just jump right into it. Okay, so this will be a quick fun micro lesson where I will be introducing you to some chocolate production details. Okay, so in this lesson you will learn about harvesting cocoa, plucking and opening of the pod, and the fermentation or the fermenting and drying of the seeds. So in regards to that, I did want to know, does anyone perhaps want to share a happy memory attached to chocolate? For example, like a favorite dish, candy or recipe, and why it makes you happy? Yes, Wasila, go ahead, definitely. Oh, cute. That's a very lovely example. Thank you very much for sharing that. So one thing maybe I can also share is an experience I had. Usually what it was with my mother back in the day, quite some time back when I was about 9-10 years old. We would go grocery shopping and she would always buy me something that I want, and all the time I would always choose a chocolate, and that is something that I remember by and a very fun memory. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, Wasila. I do appreciate it. So as we just discussed about, let's say, memories, most of us, unless you are sadly allergic to chocolate, which is a very unfortunate, we do have some positive memory connected to chocolate, as we mentioned above. So let's dive into how a weird looking fruit, yes, fruit, which is the cocoa pod, and how it becomes culinary gold. All right. So chocolate production starts with harvesting cocoa in a forest. So cocoa comes from tropical evergreen cocoa trees. These trees include Theobroma cocoa. Yep, Theobroma cocoa. If you wanted to hear that again, Theobroma cocoa. So these fruits or these trees grow in wet lowland tropics of Central and South America, West Africa, and Southeast Asia is where you can locate these trees. So the cocoa or the cocoa seeds or pods needs to be harvested manually in the forest. Okay, so the seed pods of cocoa will first be collected. Once the seeds are collected, the beans will be selected and placed in piles. Thereafter, the cocoa beans will then be ready to be shipped to manufacturer for mass production. As we all know, actual chocolates or anything that does contain cocoa. So regarding what I just mentioned, does anyone have any questions in the meanwhile? No problem. So I'll move on. So I'll share some details about cocoa beans, how they are harvested, and the production of them. So cocoa beans, they grow in pods that sprout off the trunk and branches of cocoa trees. So they are not really a bean at all, even though they do look like beans. Since they're coming from trees, that's why they are classified as a fruit. So the pods are about the size of a American football, or if you don't know what that is, a rugby ball. Just slightly smaller than a rugby ball, but it depends on the size of the actual cocoa pods. You know what I mean? So the pods start out, or once they are harvested, they start out green. When you open them, they start out green, and then they turn to an orange brown color once they do become ripe. So when the pods are ripe, harvesters travel through the cocoa orchards with machetes. Yes, machetes. The dangerous tool, that is the tool they use, and they hack the actual cocoa pods gently off the trees. So the reason for this is, for example, if machines were to do this or this job, the machines could actually damage the tree or the clusters of flowers and pods that grow from the trunk of the tree. So workers must harvest the pods by hand using short hook blades mounted on long poles to reach the highest fruit. As you know, the trees can grow quite high, and majority of the ripe ones is right on top. So you'll need that tool. So moving forward, after the cocoa pods are collected and put into baskets, the pods are taken to a processing house. Here they are split open and the cocoa beans are removed. Okay, so once they have been removed, these pods, or the actual seeds in the pod, they could be about up to 50 cocoa beans in each pod. So that is quite a bit. And these fresh cocoa beans, as I mentioned, are not brown at all. As when they start out, they are green. They don't taste at all like the sweet chocolate they will eventually produce. So I would like to ask, by what I mentioned previously, can you perhaps think of any other tasks that benefit from careful handling, and why the effort is worth the reward? Any suggestions? Yes, Vasila, go ahead. Yep, that's a good example. Wood carving. I'm surprised you actually mentioned that. And I heard someone else who said knitting, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that's also a very, very good example. So those are both examples of, let's say, a certain task that does require careful handling. So moving on, now the beans undergo the fermentation process. Part of the goal of fermentation is to get the outer layer of the actual bean, the cocoa bean, which has somewhat of a gelatinous layer or membrane, I could call it. We'll need to get that off the bean. That's what the fermentation process is all about, to actually get the bean to the final product. So they are either placed in a large, shallow, heated tray and then covered with banana leaves just to retain the heat. So if the climate is right, what you can do is you can simply heat them by the sun or put them in the sun to sun dry with a cover over them just to retain the moisture. That will be then a perfect way to do so. So what workers do is, or these harvesters do, they come along periodically to stir these beans up. The reason for this, it does allow the beans to come out equally fermented. As you know, if they're on the one side too long, the other side could be less fermented than the other. So during fermentation, this is when the beans turn brown, and how we are accustomed to seeing them. So once the beans come out, they turn brown. This process, or this entire fermentation process, can take between 5 to 8 days, depending on the climate conditions. This is only regarding sun drying. Okay, so one other thing I did want to let you know is, in regards to that, what is your favorite chocolate or favorite kind of chocolate? For example, dark, milk, white. Mine personally is milk. Yours is dark, Wasila. Well, my personal preference, I don't really agree to dark chocolate because of how bitter it tastes to me. I usually just throw it in my coffee, and that's about it. But thank you for sharing. So moving on, and after this fermentation process, the cocoa seeds must be dried before they can actually be scooped into sacks and shipped to chocolate manufacturers. Okay, so in the simplest scenario, farmers simply what they do is these fermented seeds, they spread them on trays, leave them in the sun to dry, as I mentioned previously. But there are some certain scenarios where the conditions aren't favorable and you're not able to sun dry. In this case, farmers do then have the drying machines. So these aren't the same, for example, the same machines that they use to roast coffee, or roasting machines. Reason being is the goal is to get the moisture out of the beans without roasting them. Okay, so the sun drying process usually takes about a week, as mentioned, up to 8 days, and this results in the seeds that are about half their weight thereafter, after they have dried. So with a drying machine, you can receive the same result, but the process can take as little as a day. All right, so what I did want to know is just a quick question. Can anyone think of any other valued crop that may undergo a similar process? I think I might have gave a hint earlier. Yes, right, Wasila, coffee. You picked up on that very fast. I love it. And yes, fava beans as well. That's very good examples. So they do go through a very similar process. As I said previously, coffee in example, they need to be then roasted, whereas these only need to be dried. Okay, but thank you so very much for the insight, Wasila. One other thing that I did want to mention is chocolate is a product that requires surprisingly complex procedures to produce, as we just explained. But that does conclude the lesson. I did want to say in this flash training, I'm hoping that everyone learned about harvesting the cocoa, how to pluck and the opening of the pod, and one of the most important parts, the fermenting and the drying of the seeds. Okay, so all these steps happen before the cocoa even becomes chocolate, so it is quite a lengthy process. Alright, so I did want to know, with all that information we just went through, does anyone perhaps have any questions? Understanding? Fantastic. Everyone understands? Lovely. That's great. So, since that is sorted, I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation, for their involvement, for engaging in this session. I really do appreciate it. And one other thing is, if you do wish to maybe look further into the information that I do have, or where I got my information from, I will also include a link. I'll send it in the chat as well. That way you can always just, do some research at some later stage. Okay. But once again, thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day and stay safe. Bye.